Oh, the red light needs to be on. All right, so it is 9:30 and the date is the 19th of November. This meeting is called to order. The commission and its staff are appearing from Helena, Montana in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I'm Tony O'Donnell, the presiding chairman for this meeting. Would my colleague join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. For the record, the following commissioners are here, myself and Commissioner Pinocci. Online are President Brown and Vice President Fielder. And Commissioner Bukacek is excused today. So we do have a quorum. Okay. There are no changes to the agenda. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana PSC. Are there any public commenters in the room? Are there any public commenters online? I'm told no. Okay, so the first order of business, the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
And I will second that. Any comments, commissioners? No comments, so let's vote on that. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
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 And there are no no's, okay? And it says out-of-state travel right here. I don't have any work papers on that. Dan, since you prepared this for me, what does that mean? What are we working on that today? It's not on my agenda. Oh, the travel report, but that has not to do with out-of-state travel, approval of out-of-state travel. That's not on the docket today. Okay, very good. Okay, so we have the work session. So the first item on the agenda is number 2024.02.027 Southeast Garbage LLC, otherwise known as Southeast. Southeast's application for a Class D certificate of public convenience and necessity to consider approving application. Mr. Polka.
Commissioner O'Donnell, commissioners, before you today is a draft final order in docket 2024.02.027 concerning Southeast Garbage LLC's application for Class D certificate of public convenience and necessity. Southeast Garbage seeks to transport garbage as a Class D motor carrier between all points and places within Webo, Fallon, and Carter counties. There were two protestants to Southeast application, those being Miles City Sanitation Services and G&G Garbage LLC. Also, there's another carrier who operates in Southeast proposed service area, that being Southeast Trash Removal LLC, which operates in Ekalaka in Carter County and within a 5-mile radius of Ekalaka. When evaluating an application for a PCN, the commission evaluates 4 things. First, the commission evaluates the fitness of the applicant. Then the commission evaluates whether there is a public need for the service, whether existing Class D motor carriers cannot or will not meet the public need, and whether granting the requested authority will harm transportation services that are essential and indispensable to the community in the proposed service territory. Starting with the first consideration of fitness. Fitness has been made up of 5 parts traditionally. First, the financial condition of the applicant. Second, the intention of the applicant to perform the services sought. Third, the adequacy of the equipment the applicant has to perform those services. Fourth, the applicant's experience in conducting the services sought. And fifth, if there are allegations of illegal operations, the nature of the previous operations. None of the factors are determinative, and the commission must balance and weigh those factors. The draft final order before you discusses each of those factors and concludes the applicant is fit. The findings of fact and conclusions of law regarding fitness can be found on pages 5 through 14 in paragraphs 16 through 52 of the draft final order. Next, the draft order discusses the public need, the ability of the existing motor carriers to meet the public need, and the harm to existing transportation services essential and indispensable to the community. In brief, the public need in this case is the need for a higher quality, more reliable Class D motor carrier. The record evidence demonstrated that Miles City Sanitation Services, while having overlapping authority with Southeast proposed service area, does not frequently serve those customers because it is a long distance from Miles City to do so. Miles City Sanitation has a practice of referring its customers to G&G because Miles City admits in Fallon, Carter, and Webo counties, G&G is typically a better priced option. Therefore, most of the analysis in the draft final order concerns G&G's operations. The witnesses in this case overwhelmingly discussed difficulties receiving consistent service from G&G, observed issues with G&G's equipment, and experienced difficulties with billing and customer service. Southeast proposes to bring a service that will cure those issues in the service area. Southeast has principals who have impeccably maintained equipment and who have run a business in the proposed service area for the past 30 years. There's also a discussion about the harm to the existing motor carriers, as those are some of the motor carriers indispensable to the community. The draft order finds that any harm to the existing motor carriers is not against the public interest. The draft final order provides the draft findings of fact and draft conclusions of law on pages 14 through 30 in paragraphs 53 through 120. When looking at all the needs together, staff concludes that when evaluating the requirements of Montana Code Annotated 69-12-323 Subpart 2 that discuss the need, the existing carrier's ability to meet the need, and the harm to existing motor carriers, the draft order concludes that the evidence requires the authorization of a Class D certificate of public convenience and necessity. Staff recommends that the commission approve the draft final order, which grants Southeast authority to operate between all points and places in Fallon, Carter, and Webo counties, and approve the draft final order as the commission's final order and allow for non-substantive edits required for clarity. I'm available for questions.
Commissioner Pinocci.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. I would like to make a motion to support staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Fielder seconded the motion. Any more discussion? I'd like to hear the opinion of Commissioner Pinocci, who chaired that hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. I want to thank staff's work on this. We had a hearing that lasted several days, and there was a lot of detail, and I think we're making a great decision here today. And I'm asking the rest of the commissioners to support my motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Fielder, Commissioner Brown, any comment?
None from me.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say that I was, as Commissioner Pinocci mentioned, very impressed with the comprehensiveness of the staff report and the proposed order. It was very comprehensive. Certain key points were made, and they were made very clearly and very succinctly, and I really do appreciate that. And I think the it laid out the case very, very clearly. So we'll call for a vote on the matter. All those in favor of Commissioner Pinocchi's motion, say aye.
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 Commissioner Brown? Is he still with us?
I suspect, given that he was in an airport moments ago, he just may not be able to respond right now.
He's still connected. I see his name on the screen. President Brown? Okay, then I'll declare that the motion passes 3-1, 3-0 with one abstention on that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 2024 .07.071 Northwestern Energy. Northwestern Energy's petition for the commission to substitute an alternative methodology for its FERC 302 filings to consider intervenor hydrodynamics motion to dismiss. Mr. Polko again.
Good morning.
It is.
Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioners, for your consideration is a draft order on motion to dismiss in docket 2024.07.071. This docket concerns Northwestern's petition to substitute an alternative methodology for its Federal Energy Regulatory Commission 302 filings and motion for waiver. In short, intervenor Hydrodynamics filed a motion to dismiss. Hydrodynamics generally asserts that this docket is improperly classified as a contested case and must be dismissed. Northwestern filed a response to the motion to dismiss. The briefing in this matter requires that the commission answer 3 questions. First, does 18 CFR section 292.302D require that alternative methodologies be implemented through rulemaking? Second, through its petition, does Northwestern seek adjudication of individual rights or rather seek an outcome of general applicability? And third, does Montana Administrative Rule 38.5.1908 prohibit alternative methodologies absent a rulemaking? Each of those are discussed in the draft order before you today, labeled in subsections Romanet 1A through Romanet 1C. So the draft final order answers all of these questions. In summary, 18 CFR section 292.302 subpart D does not require that alternative methodologies be implemented through rulemaking. Second, Northwestern's petition does not seek an outcome of general applicability. Rather, it seeks an adjudication of individual rights and obligations, thus properly being adjudicated as a contested case. And third, Montana Administrative Rule 38.5.1908 does not prohibit alternative methodologies absent a rulemaking. The draft order also addresses an outstanding motion to stay. Hydrodynamics requested a stay of the procedural order during the pendency of the motion to dismiss. The draft order contemplates ruling on the motion to dismiss by denying the motion to dismiss, so the motion to stay would therefore be moot. However, the deadlines have passed in the proceeding, so the draft order provides for an amended procedural schedule to allow interveners to submit testimony or request additional process in this docket. The motion to stay and the modifications to the procedural order are in paragraph 39 of the draft order. Staff recommends the commission approve the draft order on motion to dismiss as the commission's order on motion to dismiss and allow for any non-substantive edits required for clarity. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Fielder, any questions?
No, no questions, Mr. President. I will move to issue the denial of the motion to dismiss and in this order.
Thank you. Second? I'll second the motion. Mr. Polko, I did have some questions. So hydrodynamics, do you have any characterization as to why they are disputing this? Is it in their interest to do so, or is it simply they found an error and wanted to pursue it.
Commissioner O'Donnell, commissioners, I cannot speak to the thought process behind why this is disputed. Certainly the arguments by the hydrodynamics are laid out in the draft order on motion to dismiss that's before you today, as they made separate arguments concerning each of those questions that we proceeded through in my presentation. I'd be happy to discuss those if you'd like. However, I would defer to you. If
I
you'd
would,
like.
please.
Starting with the first question concerning does 18 CFR section 292.302D does that require an alternative methodology be implemented through rulemaking? The discussion of hydrodynamics arguments are primarily in paragraph 21. In that sense, hydrodynamic argues that federal rule includes requirements of notice and public comment similar to requirements for rulemaking and thus should be a rulemaking. However, as it goes throughout the order, the commission in the draft order, it discusses how that rule does not explicitly state that there's a rulemaking. There's been other states that haven't implemented alternative methodologies through rulemaking. And so nothing requires that the commission, by rule, requires that the commission proceed through rulemaking to adopt alternative methodologies. With regard to the second question, through its petition, does Northwestern seek adjudication of individual rights or rather seek an outcome of general applicability? Hydrodynamics, this discussion starts in paragraph 29 in terms of hydrodynamics argument. Hydrodynamics asserts that in Northwestern's petition, individual and party rights are not being adjudicated, essentially suggesting that the alternative methodologies are a wholesale change in how the rule will be applied. However, in response, Northwestern stated that it's only a change in how the rule would be applied to them, thus adjudicating their individual rights and no other utility or regulated entities' individual rights. In short, the commission agreed with Northwestern. The rule contemplates a legal duty for the utility to have to make these filings, which are filings pursuant to federal rules concerning avoided costs. So that information is known to the communities. However, the party that, or the entity that has obligations under that rule is Northwestern, and the request for modification would only apply to Northwestern. So thus, it's not seeking a wholesale rule change and thus does not have to be a rulemaking. It could be done through.
Well, one of the questions I had, if I could,
Go ahead.
to say, why, if it's a FERC filing, why is this commission laying down any rules of whether of Northwestern's relationship with FERC? I don't understand what our role in this.
So the FERC rules require that the utility provide this information pursuant to the state authority under PERPA. So the commission has adopted rules regarding the requirements of utilities to file this information pursuant to those federal rules. And there are federal rules that talk about the alternative methodologies as well. So it's certainly squarely within the commission's jurisdiction to be requiring utilities to file the avoided cost data.
One other question. I noticed that Montana Consumer Council was a co-intervener on this. Have we heard anything from them?
Commissioner O'Donnell, commissioners, no, there was no briefing by the Montana Consumer Council on this motion
Okay.
or either of the motions.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Call for the question. On the motion made by Commissioner Fielder and seconded by myself. All in favor, say aye.
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 Good. President Brown, since we have you for a moment on the previous issue, we could not hear your vote on that.
Aye.
Very good. So we'll change the record of that to 4-0 on the prior vote, and this passes 4-0 on this vote also. Did you want to make a? Oh, okay. Very good. Well, let's go to the third item on the agenda then. That is Commission Travel Report to provide the public with an update on commissioner and staff travel and how the same benefited the agency. To have commissioners and staff who travel provide an update to the public on the purpose of travel in conformance with agency Blue Book policy and how the same benefited the agency. Executive Director Sanders, you want to start this off?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. And
Well, wait a minute. Excuse me for a minute. President Brown, are you going to have to leave us presently to get on an airplane?
Yes, I am, in fact.
Okay, why don't you go first then? If you're prepared to do so. I know you don't have any.
I'll defer to staff.
Very good. Thank you. Proceed,
All right.
Mr. Sanders.
thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell, Commissioner Pinocci, and commissioners who are participating online. On June 24th through 28th, I traveled to the Transmission and Interconnection Summit in Arlington, Virginia, and attended meetings also of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and met with members of the majority staffs of the Energy and Commerce Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives and the majority staff of the U.S. Senate's Energy and Natural Resources Committee. The Transmission and Interconnection Summit was held shortly after the release of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's highly controversial Order 1920, which could have a profound effect on planning, siting, and permitting of transmission, and also have a potential impact on resource planning issues from the standpoint of placement of new resources on transmission queues. As you will remember, at the direction of Commission leadership, I had reached out to several executive directors of the regulatory utility commissions in neighboring states to gauge their attitudes towards Order 1920 and the impact that Order 1920 would have on their states and regional transmission planning authorities. My investigations found several states were concerned about the impacts of Order 1920, and dozens of states joined the Montana Public Service Commission and the state of Montana, as represented by the Office of the Attorney General, in offering a motion to reconsider to FERC in response to their order. To my knowledge, those motions to reconsider are still pending before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I attended a FERC meeting to follow up on our motion and met with relevant congressional committee staff to gauge the appetite in Congress to hold hearings on this issue. Should FERC move to deny our motion to reconsider? Interest in such hearings was high, but FERC has delayed consideration of our motion and may not act before the next Congress takes office on January 3rd of next year. It is possible also that FERC will act in one way or another on this. This is a matter that's been on their schedule, but has not been taken up by the commission as of yet. There are new commissioners who have just come on board there, and they think they have a full slate of commissioners for the first time in years now, so it might take them some time to get up to speed on this issue. So that sort of summarizes that first trip I took. I'd like to turn it over now to my colleague, Mr. Graff, so he can discuss a conference that he and I both went to, the CREPC YRAB meeting in San Diego.
Commissioners, Commissioner O'Donnell, Mr. Sanders and I both attended the fall joint CREPC YRAB meeting October 21st through the 24th of this year. Largely the takeaway is it allowed us to participate in person in that group's Markets Plus State Committee. As you might know, this is a group of state regulatory entities focused on the development of the SPP Markets Plus market product. That process is coming to kind of a turning point in which the task forces that have been broken out to handle particular issues of forming that market have made their recommendations, and now the holistic group within SPP Markets Plus are taking those recommendations and forming the protocols for that market. One thing of particular interest on that front is the treatment of greenhouse gas emissions data among states. That was largely the discussion held at that meeting. As it sits now, our colleagues in Washington and Oregon are refining a method to track greenhouse gas emissions data among the region. And those recommendations are being put forth and voted on by the larger SPP Markets Plus groups. Second thing to note, it also allowed us to participate in CREPC's transmission collaborative meetings and discussions. We had to do a bit of dividing and conquering as those meetings were all kind of happening at the same time. CREPC TC was considering a recommendation to consolidate West Connect and Northern Grid, the regional transmission entities in the West. And those discussions continue. It also set the table for us as we enter the Northern Grid and West Connect Order 1920 state engagement processes. As we know in this room, those are very fluid processes, and we're awaiting updates from FERC potentially Thursday on potential extensions for that process or reconsideration of Order 1920 at FERC. The meeting also included several topics, including the bingo card of resource adequacy, the priorities of the Western Interconnect, federal regulations as it pertains to the Western Interconnect. That discussion focused largely on Order 1920. So with that, I think I should turn it back over to Mr. Sanders.
Thank you. And I will wind up my part of this with a discussion of a trip that was recently taken by myself, President Brown, Commissioner O'Donnell, and Commissioner Pinocci to attend the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners annual meeting and education conference in Anaheim, California, and to meet Commissioners Pinocci and O'Donnell in advance of that meeting for a private tour of the CTC Global Advanced Conductor Facility in Irvine, California. In addition to the tour of their impressive manufacturing and testing facility, we had extensive discussions with their senior engineering staff and their chief policy and grid strategy officer concerning advanced conductors and their potential application across the energy grid in the United States and elsewhere around the world. The technology that they showed us and demonstrated the capabilities of, some of which are still in testing, which I believe will be concluded on December 13th, 14th at Idaho National Laboratory, were quite impressive. And I must say the potential of these advanced conductors for the future of the nation's energy grid and Montana's in particular are particularly impressive in terms of increased capacity, increased efficiency, reliability, and wildfire and weather mitigation and overall system resiliency. The NARUC meeting, which was the main purpose of our travel, featured the election of Tricia Pridemore of Georgia as the organization's new president for the next term. President Pridemore succeeds Julie Fedorchak, who was recently elected to represent North Dakota in its at-large seat in the Congress of the United States. There were dozens of breakout sessions covering topics from transmission planning to docket management to wildfire mitigation, and I attended several of those, as did my commission colleagues. I did have a lengthy meeting on the sidelines of the conference with Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner Mark Christie, who was very complimentary of the leadership role that the Montana PSC played in asserting the views of many states who are seeking reconsideration of FERC Order 1920 governing transmission planning and approvals.
Thank you. Instead of Commissioner Pinocci and I following up on the NERIC meeting, well, Ms. Wetzer.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell and commissioners. My name is Amanda Webster. I'm a staff attorney with the Department of Public Service Regulation. I'm here to report on my travel to Albuquerque, New Mexico from October 13th to 19th, 2024, which cost $3,198.43. This travel was to attend New Mexico State University's Center for Public Utilities, the basics, practical regulatory training for the electric industry. All other commission attorneys had previously attended this training, and it was highly recommended that I attend in person by Gary Duncan, who was a former revenue requirement expert for the commission and also an instructor at this training. This training was also identified in my annual performance review as a way to gain additional knowledge about rate case procedures, given I'm assigned to work on Northwestern Energy's pending natural gas and electric rate cases. Further, this training helped fulfill the strategic plan objective of increasing staff proficiency. I personally found the in-person training to be very helpful, especially regarding the subjects of revenue requirement and rate design. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for Mr. Graff. You said CREPC RIREB. Now, I do not know what they stand for, but did you happen to, in your great analysis, come up with what they mean?
You would ask me what they mean, Commissioner. Let me go back to, it is the Committee on Regional Electric Power Cooperation, and then YRAB is part of the Western Interstate Energy Board, but stands for the Western Interconnection Regional Advisory Body.
Yeah, for the people listening to this, so that they would understand, and those organizations and the purpose of that meeting is there's been several multi-year attempt to reap the benefits of regional cooperation from utilities in the West, having to do with transmission and generation, and Mr. Graff alluded to the greenhouse gas thing, which is I found to be astoundingly, incredibly complicated. In that there is I'm aware of there's a difference in calculating greenhouse gas emissions from coal, which is different from calculating greenhouse gas emissions from gas. And I've even heard or read an assertion that hydro dams give off a certain type of greenhouse gas. So how you measure all of those things is completely beyond me. And since they have not reached a conclusion on that, it's also beyond them as well, my feeling. So continuing on, Commissioner Pinocci on the NERIC meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. So the NARUC meeting in California was pointing out commissioners leading the way across the country. And that was kind of interesting because we're limited on how we can lead. We have to depend on the legislation to tell us what to do. But forest fires, I wanted to point out, have more carbon release than all of the coal plants probably in the world. So preventing a forest fire really cuts carbon. And we were able to take a look at high performance conductors with the ability to have a carbon fiber core instead of a steel core. And that's 2 or 3 times the strength. So this would reduce fire risk tremendously if we were to reconductor with power lines that have carbon fiber in the core, much stronger line. There was some photos of a shipping container that was wrapped up in a tornado that landed on some conductors or power lines that had carbon fiber, and the lines didn't fail, they didn't break. In Florida in July, I pointed out that there's no hurricane wind that could break a carbon fiber line, and that should be considered in the hurricane areas. But in Montana, especially in our forested areas, we should consider carbon fiber conductors, which are made by 2 or 3 different companies. And they're starting to put high-tech material inside the core, like fiber optics. So the inside of the line condition could be checked at any time. Technology here is rapidly changing, and so I'm going to suggest that in Montana, we consider that application all the time, because this would cut fire risk tremendously. The other thing I wanted to point out is the insurance companies should have some sort of reduced rate for the power companies that install high performance conductors, because the fire risk is much less. And the power company should be rewarded with better insurance rates if they can demonstrate lower risk in fire. And we see fires across the country responsible to power lines. California, for instance, cost over $1 billion. They could have replaced a lot of line. And much of the line is getting replaced with high-performance conductor. But there are other reasons to talk about this. When we were listening attentively to problems facing the country's grid, the problem with transmission has to increase dramatically. And this is very expensive, because to put in bigger transmission lines requires new structures. The permitting process is expensive, and there can be lawsuits and can back it up for years. But high-performance conductors carry twice the electricity of a standard line. So we could double the capacity of any transmission line by simply replacing the line under maintenance, and you wouldn't need the expensive permitting. And what's more impressive is these high-performance conductors can cut line loss up to 40%. That's been updated from 30%, thus saving us on line loss. The lines cost more, but actually they're the far cheaper choice, because we're able to cut our line loss by 40%. So really every day we're using the steel core technology, which is 80 years old. We really need to consider carbon fiber. And you can kind of make this comparison to if you were going to buy a 1969 Camaro. I would say you should buy a brand new Camaro, because you have airbags, which they didn't have in 69. You have anti-lock brakes, which they didn't have in 69. Sensors in the car tires. The new Camaro is just far safer than 60s technology when we're manufacturing cars. And I think that's exactly the situation we're seeing in conductors and power lines. So that was discussed pretty heavily, and there were benefits to decarbonization. So if you get carbon credits for putting in solar or wind, why wouldn't you get carbon credits for installing a power line that would cut line loss by a third or even more? So I'm thinking that power companies that will install this line should get carbon credits as well. Okay, the same credit you'd get as installing wind or solar. So I thought all that was very interesting. And if commissioners are going to lead, I think we have to have a education understanding these technology improvements and what it means. Then what was really fascinating is Tesla had their latest semi outside. This is a tractor that could pull a full-size trailer like any diesel Cummins semi that you see going down the road, only this vehicle was completely electric. And they had some hydrogen-powered cars for us to drive, and I couldn't wait to get out there and race those around the block, but they wouldn't let me drive the Tesla semi.
And trucks, not just cars.
They wouldn't let me drive the truck, I asked. Typical semi can produce about 700 horsepower, and the Tesla semi had over 1,200 horsepower. What this means is that we all go up a mountain pass, and the semis are, slowing down to 40 miles an hour. with a heavy load, and it's a struggle to pass them because you want to make sure you have a clear passing lane. And in a lot of cases, we don't have 4 lanes on our passes in Montana. The Tesla truck with 1,200 horsepower does not reduce speed on a mountain pass at all. That's quite impressive. So one of the things Tesla's not talking about is this really, I think, makes it safer for semis to travel without the struggle of cars trying to pass them, because they simply can maintain highway speed carrying any load on any pass. They have twice the power of a Cummins engine or a Detroit diesel or a Cat. So I found that really impressive, but the range is still limited to about 500 miles. And then when they get to a charging station, they require 3-phase power to charge. And it can take a couple of hours to get a semi charged up. So that's kind of a restriction. Just across the way from the Tesla electric semi was a Nikola semi, which is hydrogen powered.
Nikola being a brand name of the vehicle.
That's correct. Both these semis are being produced. And one of the benefits of hydrogen is you can fuel the truck much quicker than charging batteries. And the hydrogen produces electricity, which turns an electric motor, just like Tesla. So hydrogen is an answer over battery. And the truck is lighter because it doesn't carry the weight of the batteries. But one of the things that surprised me is the hydrogen tank. To fill it requires 10,000 PSI. Now, to put that in perspective, the average tire in a car has like 40 PSI. Scuba diving tanks have 2,500 PSI. 10,000 PSI is an incredible amount of pressure, and the tanks in the vehicle require 10,000 PSI, which is the same PSI the hydrogen cars require. And there are some hydrogen stations in California, but we're limited to where a semi can go to make sure it can get fueled with hydrogen. But it's exciting to see this technology and these vehicles being produced. I had no idea that the benefit of going over a mountain pass, maintaining highway speed, nobody really realized, but I did right away. And so anyway, there's a lot more I could talk about, but to keep it short, there is tremendous technology changes in front of us. And it's important that the commissions try to encourage our companies and our infrastructure to keep up with that. And I hope that I can have some luck with getting insurance companies to lower the rates to our power companies who make these investments in carbon core technology. We were able to go to the plant and actually see a hydraulic press break a carbon fiber line, and that was quite impressive. The strength of these power lines is unlike anything technology has, and I really feel that any line being installed in the country should have a carbon fiber technology inside the core with the ability to have fiber optics to check the condition of the line at any time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Pinocci. For myself, the thing that I was mostly interested in having relative to Montana was wildfires. And there were several sessions on that. In particular, there was a workshop that was hosted by the first vice president of NARIC, Ann Rendall, commissioner from Washington, who's been has had 3 Zoom sessions on wildfires, and of course this is an incredibly important liability issue for utilities, as well as, of course, major impacts upon communities and state budgets and fighting fires and all that. And this workshop, it was very interesting, is that they divided us up into different tables, different perspectives at each table to suggest what would be in a wildfire mitigation plan submitted by a utility. And several different perspectives came up, and then the NARIC staff is consolidating all this information to come out with a booklet to advise utilities and commissions on what is a good plan. One thing that was very important, agreed to by every table, was that it is not the expertise of a commission to determine what is a good wildfire mitigation plan, but that one would be filed much like we the relationship we have, this commission has to an IRP, is that we don't accept it, we don't reject it. It has no official standing there with us, but they have to file that with us, and so in no way is it. And Eric understands this. In no way that any commission is going to assume any type of liability for approving a plan, but just accepting is not the same as approving. So there were lots of things on the wildfires, including, as Commissioner Pinocci mentioned, about the carbon lines. There's also, there was a representative of my table from a company called Pano, I believe, and their approach to this is to have cameras in forested areas, and that they can triangulate exactly when a fire is occurring. They to the precise location. They can differentiate through infrared technology, I guess, whether or not it is smoke or is dust from a vehicle that's come up. So they give tremendous amounts of information. One of the things that Commissioner Pinocci alluded to, the carbon fiber in the lines of this one particular company, are such that they can tell anywhere along the line if a branch is hit that line, if there is somebody is screwing around with it. They can even tell if we're talking about high-powered lines through forested areas. They're pretty high. They claim that they can even tell when something, because the heat goes up, detected on that line, if something goes underneath that line. That is amazing to me. So I learned an awful lot about that. What I did was I brought back a number of booklets of information for staff to look at. This is the National Council on Electricity Policy, PUCs and the investment community opportunities for engagement. Questions for public utility commissions related to assessing potential risks to the distribution system from older inverter-based distribution generation. We've dealt with that in the past. Partnership between state government agencies and higher education institutions to support recruitment, very important. Coal to nuclear repowering, that's from NARIC. Training for states on integrated distribution system planning 2.0. Energy and industrial use cases for advanced nuclear reactors. Aggregated distributed energy resources in 2024, the fundamentals. Nuclear costs and context, and a lot of other stuff right here. So for individual staff that they may have a particular interest in one of those features. So this was my last NARIC meeting, being termed out at the end of this year, and I have learned tremendous amounts from these meetings. Not everything has to do with Montana, but it's really good for commissioners to attend these, to learn about issues that may not affect us, but they may affect us in the future, because these are things that are happening. Things having to do with electrification and mini grids, and just a tremendous number of things, including the hydrogen economy. There's a tremendous number of opportunities for learning about things that we may not deal with directly at this time, but may in the future. So I guess Commissioner Brown has left us. He's on an airplane, I suppose. So we'll adjourn the meeting. But
Mr. President.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say that this has probably been the single most informative travel reporting discussion I've experienced since joining the commission nearly 4 years ago. I really appreciate all the information that was presented, all the effort that it took to go and attend these sessions, and I want to commend particularly Commissioner Pinocci for bringing to the forefront the importance of these high efficiency power lines. And I'm really glad to see that our executive staff has taken it upon themselves to learn much more about that too. I think Commissioner Pinocci is really onto something with this, and I know the full commission has supported opening a docket into efficiency, and I'd really like to see us pursue this further. So I guess kudos to all of you that traveled and brought back excellent information. I do want to provide a gentle reminder that as part of our revised Blue Book, that a post-travel accountability report form is required to be presented to the commission at the time of the discussion. So I see that Ms. Webster has submitted one, and it's in our packet for today, in our binders for today, the very last document in our packet. And I just want to say that obviously Ms. Webster read the travel policy section on reporting and followed it to the T. And so it's her post-travel accountability report form that she's completed that's in your packet is an excellent example of what we're looking for as far as the report itself that's turned in with your receipts and all that. So I'd like to put a gold star on Ms. Webster's accountability report. Is a great example to follow on how to complete those. So I know it's kind of a new process for us. The commission adopted this new policy about a year ago, but that's the accountability part of it, is demonstrating to the public, how the funds were used and when they were used and that kind of thing. And I love the robust discussion that went along with that today. Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. Are there any other public comments in the room or online? Nothing? Okay. Our next business meeting is a week from today at 9:30 at the regular time in this location. And so advise the public of any upcoming meetings or special PSC events. Are there any special events that, other than the meeting next week? No? So, okay. Seeing no further business to come before the commission, for the record, the time is 10:22. The date is November 19, 2024, even though this says 23 on here. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.